I should have known something was wrong when Marcus stopped calling me mama. It started about 6 months before the wedding. He'd been dating Victoria for almost 2 years by then, and I'd noticed the shift subtle at first, like the way autumn creeps in before you've finished enjoying summer. He started calling me mother instead. Formal, distant, like I was someone he respected from afar rather than the woman who'd raised him alone. After his father died when he was 7, mother, he'd say on our increasingly rare phone calls. Victoria and I have decided on a destination rehearsal dinner. Or, mother, Victoria thinks it would be best if you sat with Aunt Jean during the ceremony. Not asking, telling. I told myself it was normal. He was 32, building a life with someone new. Of course she'd influence him. That's what partners do. But late at night, lying in the same bedroom where I'd comforted him through nightmares and celebrated his college acceptance letter, I wondered if I'd somehow lost my son along the way. The wedding was set for early October at the Ashford estate. One of those sprawling venues with manicured gardens and a ballroom that cost more to rent than I'd made in a year working double shifts as a nurse. Victoria came from money, old money, the kind that didn't need to announce itself because everyone already knew. Her father owned half the commercial real estate in 3 counties. Her mother had been a debutante whose wedding portrait hung in the country club lobby. I'd worked overtime for 8 months to afford a decent mother of the groom dress. Navy blue, simple but elegant, with delicate beading on the sleeves. I'd lost 15 pounds so it would fit perfectly. I wanted Marcus to be proud when he saw me. I wanted to look like I belonged in Victoria's world. Even though we both knew I didn't, the morning of the wedding, I drove 3 hours to the estate, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. The GPS led me down a tree-lined driveway that seemed to go on forever. When the house finally appeared through the golden leaves, my breath caught. It looked like something from a movie. White columns, sprawling porches, windows that sparkled in the autumn sun. I parked in the lot designated for guests. Among the Mercedes and BMWs and one Tesla that probably cost more than my house. My 12-year-old Honda Civic looked like a child's toy among them. I sat there for a moment, staring at the steering wheel, reminding myself that I had every right to be here. This was my son's wedding. I'd earned my place here through 25 years of packed lunches, helped homework, scraped knees, and sacrificed dreams. The rehearsal dinner the night before had been difficult. I'd arrived to find my name card placed at a table in the far corner, with distant cousins I'd never met and Victoria's great-aunt who spent the entire meal complaining about her hip. Marcus and Victoria held court at the head table, surrounded by their friends, beautiful, successful people with straight teeth and confident laughs. I'd caught Marcus's eye once across the room. He'd smiled a small, apologetic smile that somehow made everything worse. Then Victoria had leaned in and whispered something in his ear, and he'd turned away. But today would be different, I told myself. Today was the wedding. Today, I was the mother of the groom. That meant something. I walked into the estate's side entrance, where the wedding coordinator had instructed the family to gather. The hallway was all dark wood and oil paintings of stern-looking people in period clothing. My shoes, modest heels I'd practiced walking in for weeks, clicked too loudly on the marble floor. Oh, good. You're here. I turned to find Victoria's mother, Diane, bearing down on me in a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my car. She was a tall woman with silver hair cut in a sharp bob and the kind of posture that suggested she'd never doubted herself a day in her life. "Hello, Diane," I said, trying to match her confidence. "Everything looks beautiful." "Yes. Well, we spared no expense." She looked me up and down, and I saw something flicker in her eyes, not quite approval, but maybe acceptance that I'd at least tried. "Victoria's in the bridal suite upstairs. She's asking for, well, she needs a few things brought up. Would you mind?" She gestured to a table laden with items, a backup bouquet, a box of tissues, some kind of emergency sewing kit, and a bottle of champagne. "Oh," I said, confused. "Shouldn't the wedding coordinator? She's dealing with a crisis with the caterers. It would really help if you could just run these up." Top of the stairs, third door on the left. The one with the white ribbon. Something in my stomach twisted, but I couldn't articulate why. "Of course," I said. I'm happy to help. I gathered the items carefully, balancing them in my arms as I climbed the wide staircase. I could hear female laughter coming from behind the door marked with an elaborate white bow. I knocked softly. Come in. Victoria's voice called out, bright and musical. I pushed the door open with my hip and stepped into a room that looked like it had been decorated by someone's fantasy of what a bridal suite should be. All white and gold, with mirrors everywhere and flowers on every surface. Victoria sat in front of a massive vanity mirror, her dark hair already styled in an intricate updo. Around her, 5 bridesmaids in matching robes fussed with makeup and sipped champagne. I brought the things your mother said you needed, I said, setting them down on a nearby table. Victoria glanced at me in the mirror, and for just a second, I saw something cold flash across her face before she rearranged it into a smile. Thank you so much, she said. Then, to her friends, in a voice just loud enough for me to clearly hear, the help is so efficient here. The room went quiet for a heartbeat. The bridesmaids exchanged glances. One of them, a blonde woman with a face full of precisely applied makeup, pressed her lips together like she was trying not to laugh. I stood frozen, the words landing on me like ice water. The help? Excuse me? I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. Victoria turned in her chair, her expression one of exaggerated confusion. I'm sorry. Did you need something else? I had to clear my throat. I'm Marcus's mother. I'm not the help. Oh. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth, but her eyes held no apology. If anything, they glittered with something like amusement. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. It's just, with everything going on, and you were carrying all those things, and Mom said someone was bringing them up, I just assumed you assumed. I repeated, my hands trembling now. One of the bridesmaids, a redhead with kind eyes, looked uncomfortable. Victoria, that's Marcus's mom. We met her last night. I know, Rachel. I know. It was an honest mistake. Victoria turned back to the mirror, dismissing me. I'm getting married in 2 hours. My brain is everywhere. I'm sure she understands. But it wasn't an honest mistake. I could see it in the way the other bridesmaids avoided my eyes, and the tight smile on Victoria's face. This was intentional. This was her putting me in what she thought was my place. I should have said something. I should have defended myself right then. But all I could think about was Marcus, my Marcus, who I'd raised alone, who I'd worked 2 jobs to send to college, who I'd taught to be kind and grateful and good. What would he think if I made a scene at his wedding? Would he even believe me? I understand perfectly, I said quietly. Then I turned and walked out. I made it down the hallway before the tears came. I ducked into a bathroom, another impossibly elegant room with a chandelier and a fainting couch, and locked the door. I sat on that ridiculous couch and cried into my hands, trying to stay quiet, trying not to ruin my makeup. The help. 25 years. 25 years of sacrifice and love. And his bride thought I was the help. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for my tears to dry. Long enough for something hard and cold to settle in my chest where the soft, hopeful part of me used to be. There was a knock on the door. Someone's in here. I called out, my voice rough. Mom? I froze. It was Marcus. Mom. I know you're in there. Victoria's mom told me you were upset. Can we talk? I stood up slowly, checked my face in the mirror, mascara smudged, eyes red, but I'd manage and open the door. My son stood in the hallway in his tuxedo, looking so handsome it made my chest ache. He had his father's eyes, dark and gentle, or at least they used to be gentle. Right now, they looked worried and slightly irritated. What happened? He asked. What did Victoria tell you happened? She said there was a misunderstanding. Something about you bringing things to the bridal suite. A misunderstanding, I repeated, tasting the bitterness of the word. Is that what she called it? Marcus glanced down the hallway, as if checking to make sure we were alone. Mom, please? Today is really important. Can whatever this is wait? Whatever this is? I stared at my son. This man I barely recognized. She called me the help, Marcus. Your bride looked at me and called me the help. He winced. She said it was an accident. She's stressed, Mom. Weddings are stressful. I would never forget who your mother was, no matter how stressed I was. That's not fair, isn't it? I could feel my voice rising and forced myself to take a breath. Marcus, when did you stop being my son? Don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic. I'm asking a real question. When did you stop calling me mama? When did you start acting like I'm an embarrassment? When did you decide that I don't fit into your new life? His jaw tightened. You're making this about you. Today isn't about you. I know that. God, Marcus, I know that. I've never tried to make your life about me. But I'm your mother. I raised you alone. I worked myself to the bone for you. And now your bride treats me like staff and you defend her. I'm not defending, he stopped, ran a hand through his carefully styled hair. Look, Victoria comes from a different world, okay? She's not used to what? To people like me? The silence that followed was deafening. I didn't mean it like that, he said finally. How did you mean it? He looked at me, and for just a moment, I saw the little boy he used to be, the one who'd crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who'd made me handmade cards on Mother's Day, who'd told me I was the best mama in the world. But then it was gone, replaced by this stranger in a tuxedo. I need to get married, Mom. Can you please just get through today? Something inside me cracked. Not breaking would have been cleaner. This was a crack, deep and jagged, the kind that would never fully heal. Of course, I heard myself say, I'll get through today. He looked relieved. Thank you. And Mom? For what it's worth. You look really nice. Then he walked away, back toward his bride, leaving me standing in that elegant hallway feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. The wedding ceremony was beautiful, I suppose. I watched from my assigned seat, not in the front row with immediate family, but in the third row, between Jean and some cousin of Victoria's father. I watched my son stand at the altar in his tuxedo, watched the way his face lit up when Victoria appeared in her dress, which probably cost more than I'd made in 5 years. I watched them exchange vows about love and partnership and forever. I watched Victoria's parents dab at their eyes with monogrammed handkerchiefs. I watched it all through a fog, feeling like I was outside of my own body, observing someone else's life. When the minister said, "You may kiss the bride," and Marcus pulled Victoria close, I wondered if he remembered the first time I'd kissed his forehead and promised to always protect him. I wondered if any of it mattered anymore. The reception was held in the ballroom, a massive space with cathedral ceilings and chandeliers that cast everything in a warm golden glow. Round tables dressed in ivory linens filled the room, each one topped with elaborate floral centerpieces. A live band played soft jazz as guests filed in. I found my seat at table 12. Not at the family table. Not even close to the family table. I was seated with more distant relatives and some of Victoria's parents' friends, people I'd never met and would never see again. The woman next to me introduced herself as Margaret, a friend of Diane's from the garden club. She was kind enough, chatting about the flowers and the venue and how lovely Victoria looked. I nodded along, smiled when appropriate, and felt absolutely nothing. Dinner was served, a choice of filet mignon or Chilean sea bass, prepared by some celebrity chef Victoria's parents had flown in. It was delicious, I'm sure, though it tasted like cardboard in my mouth. I pushed the food around my plate and sipped the wine they'd poured. Expensive wine that I couldn't appreciate. Then came the toasts. Victoria's father went first, telling charming stories about his daughter's childhood, her accomplishments, her grace and beauty. He welcomed Marcus into the family with genuine warmth. Everyone applauded. Then it was Marcus's turn to toast his new wife. He stood up, microphone in hand, looking nervous and happy and in love. He talked about the first time he met Victoria at a charity gala, how she'd challenged him to be better, how she'd introduced him to a world he never knew existed. She's shown me what life can be when you reach for more, he said, gazing at his bride. When you don't settle for what's comfortable, but push yourself to grow. I felt those words like a slap. Don't settle for what's comfortable. Was that what I was? What he'd grown up with? Something to move beyond? Victoria spoke next, thanking her parents, her friends, her new husband. She talked about building a life together, about the future they'd create, about the family they'd become. She never once mentioned me, not once. No acknowledgement of the groom's mother. No thank you for raising the men she was marrying. Nothing. When she finished, people applauded. The band started playing again. Couples moved to the dance floor for the first dance. I sat at table 12, invisible, irrelevant, and finally, clearly, understanding exactly where I stood in my son's new life. I should have left then. I should have walked out with my head held high, driven home, and begun the long process of accepting that I'd lost my son to a woman who saw me as nothing more than an inconvenient reminder of his past. But I didn't leave. Instead, I waited. I waited through the first dance, watching Marcus hold Victoria like she was the only person in the world. I waited through the father-daughter dance, watching Victoria's father spin her around the floor while she laughed. There was supposed to be a mother-son dance too. The DJ had it on the schedule, but as the father-daughter dance ended, Marcus just walked away from the floor, back to his bride. The DJ, looking confused, moved on to the next song. They'd cut it. He'd cut the mother-son dance without telling me. I felt Margaret's hand on my arm. "Oh, honey," she said softly. "I'm so sorry." The pity in her voice was unbearable. I excused myself from the table and walked toward the hallway that led to the bathrooms, needing air, needing space, needing to escape the sympathetic looks that were starting to turn my way. But I didn't go to the bathroom. Instead, I found myself in a small parlor off the main hallway, a quiet room with velvet chairs and oil paintings and a grand piano in the corner. I sank into one of the chairs and finally let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. I wasn't crying anymore. I was beyond tears. I just felt hollow. That's where Victoria found me. She appeared in the doorway in her elaborate wedding dress, looking like something from a fairy tale. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, studying me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I figured I'd find you here," she said. "Hiding? I'm not hiding. I'm taking a moment." "Sure." She walked further into the room, her dress making soft rustling sounds. "Look, I know today has been hard for you. Do you?" "Don't be like that. I'm actually trying to be nice." I looked up at her, this woman who was now legally my daughter-in-law, and I didn't see any niceness in her eyes. I saw calculation. "Why did you call me the help?" I asked. She sighed, like I was being tedious. "I told you. It was a mistake." "No, it wasn't." "Just like it wasn't a mistake that I wasn't seated with family, or that you didn't mention me in your speech, or that Marcus cut the mother-son dance. These aren't accidents, Victoria. So I'm asking you, woman to woman, why?" For a long moment, she just looked at me. Then, slowly, her polite mask slipped away, revealing something harder underneath. "Because you don't fit," she said simply. "You don't fit into the life we're building." The honesty of it was almost refreshing. "Marcus is going places," she continued. "His career, our social circle, the future we're planning, it all requires a certain presentation. And you, with your old car and your nurse's salary and your department store dress, you're a reminder of where he came from. And where he came from isn't where he needs to be." I stood up slowly. "I raised that man, alone. Do you have any idea what I sacrificed?" "I'm sure you did the best you could," she said, and the condescension in her tone made my blood boil. "But that's the past. Marcus has a new family now, a better life. And the sooner you accept that, the easier this will be for everyone." "A better life," I repeated. "Is that what he thinks? That his life with me wasn't good enough?" "He doesn't think about it at all. That's the point." She moved toward the door. "Look, I'm not trying to be cruel. You can still be in Marcus's life, just peripherally. Birthday cards, Christmas calls, that sort of thing. But don't expect to be central to his world anymore. That position is filled." She opened the door and paused. "I need to get back to my reception. Take all the time you need in here. No one will miss you." Then she was gone. I stood there in that quiet parlor, her words echoing in my head. "No one will miss you." And something inside me finally broke. But it didn't break into sadness or defeat. It broke into something else entirely. Something clear and bright and sharp as glass. I walked back into the hallway, back toward the ballroom where I could hear the band playing and guests laughing. But I didn't go inside. Instead, I found the wedding coordinator, a young woman with a clipboard and a concerned expression. "Is everything all right, Mrs. Chen?" she asked. "You look, I need the microphone," I said calmly. "For the speeches. I believe the mother of the groom is supposed to give a toast." She blinked. "Oh, we didn't have you down on the schedule. I'm sure it was an oversight. I'd like to correct that now." Something in my tone made her hesitate. Then she nodded. "Of course. Let me talk to the DJ." I waited in the hallway, my heart pounding but my mind perfectly clear. I knew what I was about to do. I knew it would change everything. But everything had already changed, hadn't it? Victoria had made that clear. The coordinator returned. "He's ready for you, whenever you'd like." I walked back into the ballroom. The party was in full swing, people dancing, drinking, celebrating. Marcus and Victoria were at their head table, his arm around her shoulders, both of them glowing with happiness. I caught the DJ's eye and nodded. He raised the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "we have one more toast this evening." The mother of the groom would like to say a few words. The room quieted. I saw Marcus's head snap up, surprise and something like alarm crossing his face. Victoria's expression went completely blank. I walked to the front of the room, took the microphone, and looked out at the sea of faces. All these people in their expensive clothes, in this expensive venue, celebrating this expensive wedding. "Thank you," I said, my voice steady. "I promise to be brief." I turned to look at Marcus and Victoria. "Marcus, I have something I need to say to you. Something I should have said months ago, maybe years ago, but I was too afraid. Too afraid of losing you. Too afraid of not being enough." I could see him starting to stand, but Victoria's hand on his arm stopped him. "I raised you alone after your father died. I worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. Do you remember our apartment on Cedar Street? The one with the heater that only worked half the time? I remember lying awake at night, listening to you sleep, terrified that I was failing you, terrified that I couldn't give you everything you deserved." The room was completely silent now. "But you know what? I gave you everything I had. My time, my energy, my dreams. I taught you to be kind, to be grateful, to value people for who they are, not what they have. Or at least, I tried to teach you those things." I saw tears starting to gather in Marcus's eyes. "Today, your bride called me the help. She apologized, said it was a mistake." "But it wasn't a mistake, was it, Victoria?" Victoria's face had gone pale, and Marcus, "You know what the worst part was? When I told you about it, you asked me to just get through the day. You chose protecting her feelings over defending your mother. You chose the life she represents over the woman who gave you life." Mom, Marcus stood up now, but I held up a hand. "Let me finish, please." He stopped, tears now running openly down his face. "I want you to know something, son. I will always love you. Nothing can change that. Not this wedding, not Victoria, not the person you've become. But I also need you to know that I won't accept being treated as an inconvenience in your life. I won't accept being pushed to the margins. I won't accept being forgotten." I set the microphone down on a nearby table and looked at my son one last time. "I hope you have a wonderful marriage. I hope Victoria makes you happy. I hope the life you're building together is everything you want it to be. But I won't be part of it. Not like this. Not as someone you're ashamed of." I started walking toward the exit. Behind me, I heard Marcus call out, "Mom, wait," but I didn't wait. I walked through that ballroom, past all those frozen faces, past the shocked whispers that were starting to rise, past everything. I walked out of the Ashford estate, into the cool October evening. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. I got into my 12-year-old Honda Civic, and I drove away from my son's wedding. I drove home through the darkness, my hand steady on the wheel, my eyes dry. I didn't cry. I didn't fall apart. I just drove. When I got home, I went straight to bed, still wearing my navy blue dress with the delicate beading on the sleeves. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, and finally, I let myself feel it all, the grief, the anger, the loss. I didn't hear from Marcus that night, or the next day, or the day after that. A week went by. Then, too, I went back to work, back to my normal life. My coworkers asked about the wedding, and I told them it was lovely. I showed them the one photo I'd taken on my phone before everything fell apart, Marcus in his tuxedo, smiling at the camera. 3 weeks after the wedding, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Marcus standing on my porch, looking exhausted. He'd lost weight. There were dark circles under his eyes. "Hi, Mama," he said, and his voice cracked on the word. I stepped back, let him in. We sat in my living room, the same living room where he'd done his homework, where we'd watched movies together, where I'd held him when he cried about his father. "Victoria and I separated," he said finally, 2 days ago. I didn't say anything. I just waited. After you left, everything fell apart. The guests started talking. Victoria's parents were furious, but not at you, at us. At me, at Victoria. Several people came up to me and said. He stopped, swallowed hard. They said things about how I let you be treated, about what kind of man forgets his mother. Marcus, no. Let me finish, please. He looked at me, his eyes red. I went on the honeymoon because I didn't know what else to do. But the whole time, all I could think about was your face when you were standing there with that microphone. The way you looked at me, like you didn't know me anymore. He wiped at his eyes roughly. And the thing is, Mama, you were right. You didn't know me, because I stopped being the person you raised. I let Victoria change me. I let her convince me that where I came from was something to be embarrassed about. That you were something to be embarrassed about. And I hate myself for it. What happened with Victoria? I asked gently. We fought. On the honeymoon, after we got back every day. She couldn't understand why I was so upset. She kept saying you overreacted, that I needed to get over it. And I realized. He looked down at his hands. I realized she was never going to understand. Because to understand, she'd have to see you as a person. And she doesn't. She sees you as an obstacle. As something I need to overcome to become who she wants me to be. And who does she want you to be? Someone I don't want to be anymore. He met my eyes. I moved out, filed for an annulment. My lawyer says we have grounds because she misrepresented herself. The person I thought I was marrying wouldn't have treated my mother like that. We sat in silence for a moment. I'm so sorry, Mama, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I can forgive myself. But I needed you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. I see what I lost. I reached over and took his hand. And just like that, he broke. My 32-year-old son, this man in his business clothes and his expensive watch, crumbled. He cried like he hadn't cried since he was a child. And I held him the way I'd held him back then, when the world was too big and too scary. I've got you, I whispered. I've always got you. We talked for hours that night. Really talked, for the first time in years. He told me about the pressure he'd felt to fit into Victoria's world, about the comments people made about his background, about how he'd started to see himself through their eyes instead of his own. He told me about the moment during the reception when he'd watched me walk out, and how part of him had wanted to run after me, but he'd been frozen, paralyzed by fear and pride and the crushing weight of his own mistakes. I told him about the last few years, about how I'd watched him drift away and hadn't known how to pull him back, about how I'd blamed myself, wondered what I'd done wrong, if I'd somehow failed him by not being able to give him the life Victoria's parents had given her. You never failed me, he said fiercely. Never. Everything I am, everything good in me, that's because of you. The bad parts, the parts that let me treat you that way, those are all me. We didn't fix everything that night. Healing doesn't work like that. But we started. We started the slow, painful, necessary work of rebuilding what had been broken. That was 8 months ago. Marcus lives in an apartment downtown now, working through the annulment proceedings. Victoria fought it at first, but eventually agreed. Last I heard, she's dating someone from her parents' country club, someone whose family has the right kind of old money. Marcus comes over for dinner every Sunday. We're rebuilding our relationship slowly, carefully. He's back to calling me Mama. We talk about everything now, his struggles, his regrets, his hopes for the future. He's in therapy, working through the shame and the guilt. Last week, he brought me flowers. Just because. I want you to know something, he said as he handed them to me. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of what you did at the wedding. It took courage to stand up like that. To choose yourself. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. I put the flowers in water and looked at my son. This man who had lost his way but was finding his way back. We all lose ourselves sometimes, I said. What matters is whether we find our way home. He hugged me then. A real hug. The kind that says everything words can't. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe Marcus will meet someone new. Someone who understands that love doesn't ask you to erase your past. Maybe he won't. Maybe he'll build a different kind of life entirely. But whatever happens, I know this. I got my son back. And I got myself back to the part of me that had been slowly disappearing. Trying to make myself smaller, less embarrassing, more acceptable. I'm done with that now. I'm a nurse. I drive a 12-year-old Honda Civic. I raised my son alone. I worked 2 jobs to send him to college. I wore a navy blue dress from a department store to his wedding. And I am enough. I've always been enough. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that moment in the ballroom, standing there with the microphone, looking out at all those faces. People have told me I was brave, that I was strong, that I did what needed to be done. But the truth is, I was just a mother who'd had enough of being invisible. The truth is, I was just a woman who'd finally realized that being treated with dignity isn't something you have to earn. It's something you deserve, simply by being human. And the truth is, sometimes love means walking away even from your own child long enough for them to understand what they're losing. I don't regret what I did. Not for a second. Because it brought Marcus home. Not to Victoria's world of country clubs and old money and keeping up appearances. Home to himself. Home to the values I'd tried to teach him. Home to me. Last Sunday, as we sat at my kitchen table eating pot roast, his favorite meal, the one I used to make every birthday, Marcus looked up at me and smiled. This is good, Mama, he said. This is really good. He was talking about the pot roast. But he was talking about more than that too. About us. About healing. About second chances. Yeah, I said, smiling back. It really is. And in that moment, sitting in my modest kitchen in my modest house, with my son across from me and the evening light filtering through the curtains, I felt wealthier than Victoria ever would, because I had something money couldn't buy. I had my son back. And I had myself. And that, I've learned, is everything.